This information may be interpreted as science fiction or however the viewer decides. It is shared for entertainment purposes, although we take it with utmost importance. Class 16. Are extraterrestrials good or bad? Toward understanding cosmic diversity.
Hello everyone! How have you been? Have you been waiting for this next video class? I have, as I am also excited about many important videos I must publish in the upcoming months. So do subscribe, because everything being discussed nowadays within the ET and UAP, UFO community will be talked about here as well. I will give you a lot of information and context. Let's begin. So, we are back to the subject of extraterrestrial life as a general term, because actually a lot is also going on at the intraterrestrial levels, for example. But little by little, let's stay for now within the broader extraterrestrial frame. In class 7, I have already presented you with the idea of extraterrestrial stellar people, humanoid and others. But I didn't go into the precise explanation of whether they are actually positive or not. I did go into the subject of good and bad when we discussed the Galactic Federation. Look it up. But I think it's important we examine this again, because it directly concerns us here on Earth, especially in light of all the ET-related information being released to the public out there. We will start from the broader, more expanded, more philosophical, as some might say, but nevertheless very true perspective. And then we will narrow it down and conclude with more precise and duality-based information. So stay until the end if you want to find out which races we regard as antagonistic to human well-being and which we do not. Let's go.
We must begin by looking at it briefly from the expanded view. And that is that drastically opposing concepts, such as good and evil, only exist within the so-called dualistic game of life. Which further means all of us who are within it, points of attention of the source itself, are holding agreements, ideas, and attachments to those ideas according to our own specific perspectives. And these are then guiding our actions. Ultimately, there are no absolutes in terms of evil and good. Those concepts only apply as long as we are playing so-called life, physical and otherwise, as concepts of dark and light extend into those less dense realms as well, slowly dissolving into oneness, integrated into the source itself. In other words, on the highest level of all, it is our belief that there is no good or evil. The concept emerges as we become more individualized selves. I understand some people might disagree with this expanded perspective or find it impractical. And it is a natural reaction, since in a duality-based incarnation, it is hard to live without a contextual framework of what is good and what is bad, at least to some degree. I would even say such a type of life would be hard to imagine, or even impossible. But I do not wish to stray too much into metaphysical digressions at this time. What is important to emphasize, to keep this discussion on topic, is that the universe, just as our Earth is full of beings of all forms and kinds. Life is not exclusive to this one planet, far from it, and everyone out there will be different, just as it happens here. And since, as I mentioned above, it is impossible to exist as an individual self, especially within the incarnate world, without some concept of good and bad, all those beings will naturally and obviously hold unique perceptions and concepts related to that as well. But what will those concepts be? Will their idea of good and bad be the same as ours? What is really good and bad? Is there a universal criterion out there by which all of the civilizations abide when deciding that? Yes and no. Most stellar societies govern themselves autonomously and naturally by the innate sense of common understanding of what would be right, which is what binds them together and forms the basics of their holistic society structures, the ethical framework of the citizens themselves. I am referring here to the individual cultures and races operating within their own worlds. Then, on the more intercultural level, there are regulations that aim to provide guidelines and consensus for harmonious coexistence among distinct societies and races, the same as on Earth with laws and treaties. But as you already suspect what my next statement with regard to that will be, they are not always reflective of what might be good or ethical from the perspective of the person or group who is made to abide by such regulations. Evil and good are not something absolute or definitive. There are a lot of nuances at play here, and very simply put, what seems good to one may not always be so to another, or not in every possible situation. The same applies to what goes on in space, since these are larger realities but still based heavily on duality. Good and bad will be relative, and only viewed as such because of the conflicts of interest among people, or groups, or entire cultures, and conflicts of ideas, points of view, and even larger interests they do have, or at least differences. What is beneficial to one will not be to another, and is hence regarded as positive or harmful, and vice versa. It is all based on individual interpretation and the lens through which both are viewing reality. This is basically what it boils down to, and that is why it is not easy to respond to the subject of today's class with a simple yes or no. For example, as we were told, the fact that a species is aggressive is an interpretation of those who disagree with it. It is not an attribute of intrinsic evilness of the species. It is just that its attitude and way of being contrast with those of others. As our stellar friends observed, people in general have an innate tendency to take it for granted that when something is not in their immediate interest or convenience, it is negative or evil, while from the larger perspective, it is simply something the other side found correct and necessary according to their own framework of reality, a specific situation, or a need. And yes, you noticed correctly, the larger perspective does not seem to be taking sides. Oh well. This especially applies when the cultural diversity grows to enormous depths, as is the case with everything related to life and matters in space and having to do with Earth. This is a complicated, multiracial, and even multi-density reality that no one fully has a grasp on. And, as is to be expected, and I repeat, each race will have its own views, principles, codes of conduct, ethics, and sometimes different from those prevalent on Earth or from each other's.
Oh boy, a lot of words, and you still don't know if the ETs are good or bad, right? I know what some of you might be thinking. And yes, I will get there soon. But first, I needed you to have this larger context and understanding, because as we expand our thinking and range of perception, so must we include these broader perspectives as well. And they will not be contradictory to what I will say next. In stellar societies, multiple perspectives can be held at the same time, all valid and inclusive. And I would like you to get used to this kind of thinking. So now, let's move on. As has been stated above, good and evil can be viewed as conflicts of interest and actions arising as a result. What is beneficial to a group might turn out to be detrimental to another. So let's establish this as our base, with us on Earth as a single collective. Looking from an Earth human perspective then, are the ET races favorable to our well-being, or are there some of whom we should be worried? I'll be honest. There are those that are friendly and very benevolent, helpful, generous, inspiring, and compassionate. Others are more passive and observant, but then there are others who do not have our best interest in mind, but solely their own. And those will be viewed as negative or regressive. I will not go now into the specifics of each single race out there. It will actually be a topic of the next video, but let's analyze this briefly.
Let's begin with the positive side of things. The Earth has been surrounded by countless benevolent races representing countless civilizations, and in the management of the Galactic Federation for thousands of Earth's linear years. They have been present in human history and culture, and continue to be so, sometimes directly, sometimes more remotely, observing, influencing, assisting, co-creating, accompanying, with others simply there. While it would be irresponsible to catalogue the entire species into good or bad only because of their genetic lineage, as there are individual differences of opinion and action within individual races too, it could generally be stated, for example, that civilizations such as Pleiadians, Arcturians, Sirians, Andromedans, Urmas, etc., are mostly good and caring people, great spiritual teachers, healers, scientists, explorers, and with utmost respect toward life and the well-being of others. I am only using them as an example, though, because groups like that abound in millions out there, and in fact comprise the majority of cultures in space. And many of them are in close proximity to and interaction with Earth, caring for what goes on our planet, with its citizens and their souls, and are generally very supportive, wise, and kind toward humans. They suffer when we do, and empathically understand the level of difficulty of living on Earth, although some more closely than others. Of course, even they can be viewed as not always making the right decisions from a purely human perspective. But that is because they are simply more people. On top of that, not always with a mentality that matches ours. They just do what they understand as the most correct course of action for each event or circumstance, according to the parameters of what is correct from where they stand. They do what is best, with the best data they have and with the best intentions, even if things may go sideways in the process sometimes. On the whole, however, generalizing, we can consider them positive, proactive in their approach to humanity, and very well-meaning. We have nothing to fear from them, quite the contrary. They are the majority of the stellar collective. Moving a bit further along the dualistic measuring stick of right and wrong, we have what we already discussed in the episode about the Galactic Federation. All those variables of situations where the scenarios or interpretations can look completely different when looking at them from the perspective of someone on Earth and then someone outside. The lens changes a lot, and things shift their meaning, even suffering and what it means to live on this planet. As we were told, many races considered benevolent are quite passive and not so moved toward matters related to human suffering and negativity on Earth, for example, all because of how these kinds of experiences are understood on the so-called other side, and even desired, as it is claimed. They proceed as they best think things should happen for this realm. But in the meantime, it does not mean that everything they do, or do not do, is always immediately convenient for us living inside it. Additionally, some of these races are not Lyrian-based, and hence their range of emotions and empathy is different too. They process life differently and are more logical in their approach, with many misunderstandings also arising because of these inbuilt mental differences. Continuing with the example of the Galactic Federation, many of their actions are positive, and others can be interpreted as permissive and even cruel, and the lack of such action can be perceived this way too. And that interpretation will be perfectly valid when considering a purely Earth-human perspective. However, it will have a different take by the very races managing this planet from above, the ones generally considered positive and friendly. Without going into specific details or examples now, let's say the Federation is trying to make humans change course, allowing conflicts to see how far humans go and to stimulate, as it is said outside Earth, their spiritual and mental progression. Within that, and even if it is with good intentions, and because they see no other option or procedure, some of their methods can be validly interpreted as a negative to immediate human needs living on Earth. It doesn't make them bad, only not always aligned with the direct physical desires of Earth citizens, especially if their native backgrounds and cultures and their understanding of overall reality are very different and more expanded than those we can find on Earth. By the way, we are not entering here into the more shady elements of the Galactic Federation. We talked about some of that in Class 9.
We will talk about different types of extraterrestrials, and intraterrestrials, as those exist too, in the very next episode. Here I'm giving you a very general overview of what we know. But before that, we have one more group of non-humans to discuss. And these are the kinds that are not aligned with what's best for the human race. Again, they are viewed this way as their actions do not reflect our well-being, acting purely out of their own cold, self-centered perspectives and needs.
Let me put it clearly, and expanded the levels of the subject where I talked about evil being subjective aside. From the very standpoint of us, humans on Earth, and even of other benevolent and peaceful stellar races out there, these types of species are negative, exploitative, and regressive. Regressive in this context would entail apparent regressive tendencies away from connection and integration with Source, because the more expanded and closer your inner awareness of Source, the more compassionate and holistic your approach toward other species out there, as you understand them all to be part of the larger you, the cosmic self, the greater whole. The regressive races, and I will mention briefly which races they are, do not hold such concepts, or do so to a minimal degree, and their sole approach is manipulation and exploitation of humans for personal gain, control, and dominance, and in some cases, survival. They lack emotions and empathy toward us, whom they regard as a lesser species, and whom they have no problem harming only to boost their own existence and power. Unfortunately, because of the specific nature of life dynamics on Earth, with so many challenges, contrasts, the veil of forgetfulness, extreme duality, and suffering unfound elsewhere, viewed by many souls before entering here as an excellent opportunity for growth, many of those unethical and regressive species have found a perfect environment to thrive and diversify, potentializing even more the level of difficulty on this one planet. They have been meddling invasively and negatively with our affairs for a very long time, genetically, but mostly mentally, always in attempts to achieve total control over the population and exploit it in the most effective way possible. These are the non-human groups working alone or covertly with dark societies, dark space program representatives, the Vatican, and Shadow Earth governments that I have mentioned in previous episodes when we talked about the Cabal and power structures on Earth. They are the ones directing us from behind and exerting dark and manipulative influence on our world. These are regressive factions of reptilians, Draco-reptilians, and many types of negative grays, which we will discuss more in the future. Side note, and an important one, do not make the mistake of associating all reptilians and greys with regressive agendas though, as there are positive kinds as well. And another important side note that I must throw in here, but will develop later on, is that many of these regressive factions and negative humans on Earth have direct links to dark astral entities of a more occult nature too. And important note number 3. The groups I have not mentioned yet would be those that we might refer to as half-regressive, from our perspective of course, such as, for example, tall whites, understood by our friends to be unfriendly and inconsiderate, as they said. They are totally humanoid and have been reported to have cooperated with Earth's military. Oh yeah, what a carousel our planet is, isn't it?
And one more thing I want to mention here. There are some people out there, some very notorious within the UFO and disclosure movement, who have consistently stated that the negative ET species do not exist, and that if they really had negative intentions toward us, they would have invaded or wiped us out long ago. For the record, my views and our views are different. The regressive species we are talking about are not interested in wiping us out. Plus, they would first need to deal with the gigantic force, the Galactic Federation, which, regardless of differences in intentions among its ranks, does protect this territory from such drastic actions. And they are not interested in that, wiping us out, because what serves their purpose the most are slow and deceptive methods of unseen manipulation, exploiting us covertly and not openly behind our backs, without us ever knowing about their existence. That's how they operate. Should we be afraid? Absolutely not. The manipulations and interventions of this kind have been going on for thousands of years. Always adjusting methods, yes, but they definitely do not need to invade or attack us aggressively and openly. In many ways, they did that long ago. Hence, I find that argument of them not being negative because of that rather moot. The universe is duality-based, as below, as above. And the only method out of the oppression and matrix reality is to become aware of what's going on. That's why we talk about all this stuff here in Space Academy. Knowledge and truth free. Although obviously, it's something I simply offer as our perspective. Anyway, my friends, let's make a pause right here before your heads spin too much. As I told you in the beginning, the subject of whether the ETs are good or bad is not black and white. But I hope you have a slightly better understanding of the subject. I say slightly as this is enormous, and there is always so much to uncover and learn. In the next episode, we will take a closer look at some of the most known ET races to interact with, or that are close to the human race. I have recently seen that they have been talking in the mainstream media and Congress about 4 alien types that have been allegedly revealed by an ex-CIA official. But how about hundreds? Well, I will not have time to cover 100 species in one video, but I will do my best to effectively present many of them. Until then, my friends, thanks for sticking with me until the end, and I will see you here in this same section of this ship for the next learning session. Bye-bye!
Summary. From the broadest perspective, there is ultimately no good or evil, and the concept of duality emerges at the level of the individualized self-incarnation. What does exist are unique ways of perceiving reality, as well as unique interests and needs. What is considered good or bad is fundamentally based on conflict of interest among different races, or among individuals within those races. The universe is vast and still based on duality. Consequently, there are species and races with different approaches to life, and as a result, different courses of action that may sometimes conflict. The majority of stellar societies in the universe are benevolent and positive when viewed from the perspective and interest of humans on Earth and other Lyrians. The perspective changes when viewing certain matters from within an incarnated life on Earth versus from the perspective of someone living outside it. Because of this, the actions taken by some extraterrestrial civilizations may not always align with the immediate needs of people on Earth. There are also races that are antagonistic to our well-being. They have been involved with humanity for a very long time, manipulating and influencing Earth's affairs from behind the scenes, while cooperating with the Cabal. One way for our society to become freer and help create a positive direction for humanity is to become aware of what is happening, including both the positive and the negative. Truth and knowledge bring freedom. We are ready.